2015, Amazon was paying FedEx and UPS a combined $11.5 billion annually to deliver its packages. That number, $11.5 billion, was larger than the entire revenue of most airlines on Earth. It was also a number that was growing at 30% per year. Because Amazon itself was growing at 30% per year, and every package Amazon shipped required a truck, a plane, or a van operated by someone else. Amazon's logistics costs were not just a line item. They were a structural vulnerability. The company that had disrupted retail, cloud computing, and digital media was entirely dependent on two companies, FedEx and UPS, for the physical movement of its products. Then, in June 2019, FedEx made a decision that changed everything. They dropped Amazon as a customer, not by accident, not because of a contract dispute, but as a deliberate strategic choice. FedEx looked at the volume Amazon was generating, the prices they were demanding, and the direction the relationship was heading, and concluded that Amazon was no longer a customer. It was becoming a competitor. FedEx was right. Amazon Air had already been operating for 3 years by that point, and today it is on its way to becoming the third largest cargo airline in the world. To understand what Amazon built and why it matters, you need to understand the vulnerability that Amazon had been living with for years before it acted. In the early years of Amazon Prime, the 2-day delivery promise was underwritten almost entirely by UPS and FedEx. These companies had spent decades and hundreds of billions of dollars building the infrastructure, the planes, the sorting hubs, the delivery fleets, the route networks that allowed a package to move from a warehouse in Kentucky to a doorstep in Seattle in 48 hours. Amazon could not have built that infrastructure in the 1990s or 2000s. It didn't need to, because UPS and FedEx were doing it, and doing it well, and the pricing was manageable relative to Amazon's revenues. But as Amazon grew to dominate e-commerce, the relationship shifted. By 2013, Amazon represented more than 6% of UPS's total revenue, a single customer accounting for nearly $1 in $16 the company earned. At FedEx, the dependence was similar. This gave Amazon enormous negotiating leverage on price, which it exercised aggressively, but it also created a different problem: capacity. During peak periods, the weeks before Christmas, Prime Day, back to school, Amazon's surge in order volume exceeded what its carriers could absorb. Packages were delayed. Christmas deliveries missed their dates. Amazon absorbed the customer backlash. Even though the failure was operationally at UPS or FedEx, Amazon's leadership concluded that, depending on third parties for the critical last mile of its customer promise, was an existential risk to its brand. They decided to internalize it. The first move was ground delivery. Amazon began building its own delivery station network and launching Amazon Logistics, its own last-mile delivery contractor fleet, in 2015. But ground delivery alone couldn't solve the air freight problem. For packages moving across the country overnight, Amazon still needed aircraft. In 2016, Amazon announced a partnership with Air Transport International and Atlas Air to operate aircraft under the Amazon Prime Air brand. The initial fleet was small, 20 Boeing 767 freighters, and operated under dry lease arrangements where Amazon contracted for capacity, but did not own the aircraft. The pilots and crews remained employees of the contracted carriers. Amazon supplied the brand and the volume. What happened next happened fast. Within 2 years, Amazon had expanded to 40 aircraft. By 2020, the fleet stood at 80. In 2021, Amazon announced orders for its own aircraft, not through a third party, but directly. The company ordered 11 Boeing 767-300F freighters from existing operators, and separately made a 15% equity investment in Air Transport International's parent company, Air Transport Services Group, giving it a financial stake in its primary operator, while preserving the operational flexibility of not owning a full airline directly. By 2023, Amazon Air was operating over 110 aircraft, serving more than 70 destinations across the United States, with growing international operations. The network was handling a significant portion of Amazon's own interfacility freight, the movement of inventory between fulfillment centers, as well as time-sensitive customer deliveries. Amazon had not just reduced its dependence on FedEx and UPS, it had built a parallel system capable of handling peak volume without them. The scale of what Amazon assembled in less than a decade is extraordinary. When set against the timelines of traditional aviation development, FedEx spent 15 years building its superhub in Memphis before it had anything resembling Amazon Air's current footprint. UPS's Worldport hub in Louisville, which now handles 1.5 million packages per night, took decades of incremental investment to reach its current capacity. Amazon built a comparable airborne logistics capability in under 10 years, largely by leasing existing aircraft and contracting established carriers, rather than starting from zero. This approach, leasing rather than owning, was itself a strategic choice. Owning aircraft means owning depreciation, owning maintenance liability, owning regulatory certification. Leasing means flexibility. If Amazon's volume patterns change, it can return aircraft. If newer, more efficient freighters become available, it can transition its fleet without writing off stranded assets. The company that disrupted traditional retail by building flexible, scalable infrastructure is applying the same logic to aviation. The Amazon Air Hub at Cincinnati Northern Kentucky Airport, a facility Amazon opened in 2021, after investing $1.5 billion in construction, is the clearest statement of long-term intent. A company that was merely supplementing third-party capacity would not build a $1.5 billion hub. A company building a rival to FedEx's Memphis hub, which Amazon's Cincinnati facility closely resembles in design and function, is building something permanent. FedEx saw this coming, which is why they walked away in 2019. When FedEx ended its ground delivery contract with Amazon, followed shortly after by ending its air freight relationship, the company's leadership made a specific argument. Amazon was using FedEx's capacity and expertise to build the very network that would one day compete against FedEx for third-party business. Better to lose the revenue now than to spend 5 more years training the competitor. UPS made a different calculation. They maintained their Amazon relationship longer, judging that the volume was too valuable to give up before Amazon could genuinely replace it. Both companies' instincts turned out to be directionally correct, but about timing. Amazon has not yet gone after third-party parcel delivery in a meaningful way. It has not positioned Amazon Air as a carrier for hire. The current model is almost entirely captive. Amazon's own packages, Amazon's own network. But the infrastructure being built does not require captive volume to be economically viable. It requires volume. And as Amazon's e-commerce business grows, the volume is guaranteed. The airline that nobody sees is now larger than most airlines that anyone has heard of. Amazon Air operates more aircraft than British Airways operates long-haul wide-bodies. It moves more cargo than most national postal services move by air. It runs a hub and spoke network that, if it were measured as an independent carrier, would rank among the top 10 air freight operators in the world. The scale of the infrastructure investment required to reach this position is rarely discussed in coverage of Amazon Air. The Wilmington, Ohio hub, originally built for DHL. Before DHL abandoned it in 2008, following a dispute with local authorities, became Amazon's first major air hub in 2017. Amazon then committed approximately $1.5 billion to develop the Cincinnati Northern Kentucky Airport facility in Hebron, Kentucky, designated the primary Amazon air hub in North America, with an expected capacity of processing 200 flights per Dalton Y when fully operational. This is not a small parcel operation. It is purpose-built air freight infrastructure at a scale that only FedEx and UPS had previously constructed for domestic express delivery in the United States. The aircraft fleet has been assembled through a combination of leases, partnerships, and dry lease acquisitions. Amazon does not own aircraft directly. It leases them, primarily from Atlas Air and Air Transport International, and operates under agreements that give it operational control while avoiding the balance sheet weight of direct ownership. This is, in fact, a deliberately conservative capital structure for an aviation operation. Amazon is not trying to become an airline company. It is trying to own the logistics capability while managing the capital risk that airline ownership entails. If the air freight market shifts, or if drone delivery becomes viable, for a wider range of packages, Amazon can adjust its leased fleet far more easily than a company that owns 100 aircraft outright. The growth trajectory is the part that most concerns competitors. In 2016, Amazon Air operated approximately 20 aircraft. By 2023, the fleet had grown to more than 110 aircraft. If the growth rate of the previous 7 years continues, and Amazon's e-commerce volume growth gives no indication of slowing, the fleet could exceed 200 aircraft by the end of the decade. At that scale, Amazon Air would be unambiguously the third largest cargo operation in the United States, behind only FedEx and UPS. What makes the Amazon Air trajectory most alarming for FedEx and UPS is not what Amazon has done so far. It is what the infrastructure makes possible. Amazon Air is currently structured entirely around Amazon's own shipments, the packages from Amazon's own marketplace and fulfillment operations. But a network of 110-plus aircraft operating hub and spoke connections across the United States, with dedicated sorting facilities and ground handling at dozens of airports, is capable of carrying far more volume than Amazon's own e-commerce generates. If Amazon chose to open that network to third-party shippers, to position Amazon Air as a carrier for hire in direct competition with FedEx and UPS, the existing infrastructure would need only incremental investment to handle the additional volume. Amazon has stated publicly that it has no current plans to compete with FedEx and UPS for third-party freight. FedEx's decision to walk away in 2019 suggests their internal assessment of Amazon's long-term intentions differs from that public position. Amazon did not set out to build an airline. Amazon set out to solve a problem, the dependence on third parties for a capability central to its customer promise. The airline is the solution. The fact that it is now the third largest cargo operation in America is not a goal that Amazon announced in 2015. It is a consequence of Amazon doing, at scale and at speed, what it has always done: identify a dependency, build around it, and own the capability so completely that the dependency